strongly supportive of his candidacy.
But there was a kind of tipping point there at a time when Barack Obama has studiously avoided making race a centerpiece of his campaign at all. The term is thrown around about it being a post-racial political candidate. Is that something that's been gratifying to you?
Well, certainly we as a society have to find constructive ways to move away from race. Race and racism is still very real in our nation. We know that because as soon as Senator Obama announced that he was running, because of threats, he had to get a Secret Service detail. So, but you don't focus on what is not. You focus on what can become. And I think that's what he's doing. And number one, running for President of the United States, he has to represent all the people. And I think he's going to do an incredible job.
You know, Senator Clinton and her supporters have made the point in the course of this convention that there may be cracks now in the glass ceiling given all of the support that she had in the course of the primaries, but it wasn't enough for her to achieve the nomination. What level of fear do you have that for all of Barack Obama's success, the country, the electorate, is not prepared to put an African-American in the White House?
Well, you know, that is always something we have to consider, but I do believe that first of all, Senator Obama has galvanized and mobilized young people like no one else ever in the history of our nation. And if that vote, that electorate turns out, then I believe Senator Obama will be the next president. I also think Senator Biden will help Senator Obama with the blue-collar workers, white workers in America. I think when you look at what has happened in the past, people have no choice. They've got to look at supporting a candidate of change.
All right, Martin Luther King III from Invesco Field today. Thank you very much for joining us. We're quite pleased to have your views tonight. And still with me here at our location is Rachel Maddow. It's interesting that he brought up the point about Joe Biden. Can he help him with some of the working class voters that have eluded him in the primaries? We've talked about it before on the show that for any Democratic nominee, white working class voters are a problem. They were a problem for John Kerry. George Bush got a higher number of those voters. So there is still a question about how much Joe Biden can do in this area.
And the sort of unspoken thing in the discussion about Obama and white working class voters is whether or not racism is associated with class. And I think that whether or not people who are the lower socioeconomic class are more likely to be motivated by racial prejudice. I don't think there's much evidence of that, but I think that it is sort of the caricatured way we think about racism in this country. The polls have really bounced up for Obama among a lot of the groups that Senator Clinton bested him among during the primaries. And I'm not sure that the working class issue and the working class whites issue is going to be much different for an Obama candidacy than for any other Democrat.
Will race be a factor in a way that will be difficult to even talk about? In other words, that feeling of otherness, that Barack Obama is somehow other, could be an issue of whether people think he's elitist or that he's too liberal, or it might just be something that people can't quite articulate, but they just don't feel the comfort level with him.
It gets mapped onto all these other things, right? I mean, the Democratic Party has had a lot of trailblazers. I think it was 1928, the first Catholic they put on the they put on the ticket, on the national ticket for the presidential campaign. It was Geraldine Ferraro, the first woman, the first Jew with Joe Lieberman, and now the first African American. The Democratic Party has consistently put forward people who they didn't know the American people were going to be comfortable with or not. All of those other pioneers lost. And Barack Obama will be a trailblazer in more than one way.
And as we continue to look at the crowds gathering on what is really the new convention floor of Invesco Field, it goes back to one of the things that Barack Obama, it seems, has to do tonight, which is to spend as much time talking about defining McCain, defining the choice in this election, to create the contrast rather than just reflecting on himself. There can be too much focus on who is Barack Obama,
yes.
and a little bit too much of the cult of personality. He's got to get to the words. He's got to get to the contrast.
He's got to talk about the stakes in this election and what he represents, what Democrats represent, as opposed to John McCain. I think he can get away tonight without hitting John McCain too personally if he does an indictment of Republican politics and identifies McCain as the symbol of that for this election.
Rachel Maddow stays with us. Thanks very much, Rachel. We're going to come back, take a break, talk to the Reverend Al Sharpton, who is here about this historic event. Invesco Field, the crowd's gathering. Upwards of 70,000 people expected tonight at Invesco Field, where Barack Obama will officially accept his party's nomination. It is the culmination of a week of choreography for the Democrats. We're back on Race for the White House after this.